There we go. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. Okay. Right. There. Okay. So this was where we got to. Excuse me. Just before we took our break. Just move that out of the way there. So this is our systems page. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that the systems page is displayed depending on where the engine page is currently being shown. So, excuse me. If I press this systems page, the SYS page button here, as you can see there, this is on the multifunction panel. We know where that is now. If I press that systems switch, it's going to bring up this systems page. Now the systems page is shown on the opposite display to where the engine display is currently being shown. Okay, so if the engine display is on the first officer's side, when I press the system switch, it's going to show it on the captain's inboard display. Anything else that's on that display will be put into the compact mode. You'll notice at the top here you've got an icon, okay, that says maintenance on it, or maint. That's going to take me through to the maintenance pages, which we'll look at in a moment. The magenta square box that's around it, that's showing me where the cursor is, and I would normally see a cursor on there, whether it be the captain's cursor, the first officer's cursor, or the maintenance cursor from the P61 panel, depending on who's moved that rotary control last. Down here, we've got information relating to the hydraulics, okay, quantity and pressure. So long as that information is available, it will always be shown, okay. This is where you would normally see quantity and pressure, okay. I mentioned to you earlier that the pressure information is sided, so hydraulics A goes to DPC number 1, hydraulics B goes to DPC number 2. If you lost DPC number 1, then you would lose the pressure indication here for hydraulic A. Okay, it wouldn't necessarily bring on the pressure light on the P5 panel. If so long as you've got pressure there, that's fine. The pressure light will be off. You'll just lose the indication on these displays. So this is standard. Every MAX aircraft should have this on it. As I say, if it's available for display, it will be displayed. Brian will go over these, the quantities and such like with you when he covers hydraulics. Down below here, everything on this page and everything below the hydraulics is optional. So not all MAX will have this on it. If you do have the options, then we will show you the the tyre pressures. Tyre pressures, obviously the nitrogen charges within the tyres. Shows here inside the tyre, shows you the current pressure. Once the pressure starts to drop to below a set value, then obviously the indication is going to go amber to give you to highlight a caution that there's something wrong, got low pressures in the tyres. These are to do with brake temperatures, these figures here, okay. So each each main wheel has a carbon fibre brake, okay, and we monitor the temperature of those brakes. Normally you will see the brake is shown with 0.0 as a value and then an unfilled rectangle. As I apply the brakes and I use the brakes, they're going to become hotter. This figure, this digital readout here is going to start to increase, okay, what we call scalar units. They go from 0.0 to 9.9. Brian will probably correct me, and I shouldn't say these things because it's not really my area, but I think 9.9 is about 750 degrees C. So quite a hot brake if it gets to 9.9. As the temperature starts to increase, then it gets to a threshold where it no longer becomes the warmest brake, but it becomes the hottest brake. So in that case, we change it to amber. Again, another cautionary indication. Okay. You can see here, this one says 2.5 and it's filled in white. That's just telling me that that is the warmest brake of those two. Okay. just to highlight it. That's all it's doing. There's no brake fans, okay, so there's no way of rapidly cooling these down. This indication here, I always refer to this because it's very similar to the 787 as the Dr. McCoy's medical bay. It looks like on the Starship Enterprise in the medical bay, Dr. McCoy's medical lounge, when people was dying or something like that in an episode, you used to have these triangles that went up and down a scale. This is what these are doing. These little triangles here are going up and down these scales. This is all to do with flight controls. So our ailerons, elevators, rudders, and on the MAX, the flight spoilers. Okay. Don't forget the spoilers on the MAX are all fly-by-wire, controlled by the electronics unit. These little pointers, these triangles move because the control surface moves. Okay. Not because the control in the flight deck is moving, but because the control surface is being moved. So it gives the crew a visual indication of the actual position of that flight control surface. But again, it is optional. Okay. And again, Brian will mention these flight spoilers and such like, and how they've changed when we get to flight controls. So that's our systems page. To get to it, as I've mentioned, you press the systems button, okay, and that's what you see. That's our systems page. We also have an info switch, okay. So if memory serves, on the NG, you had the N1 speed control panel that you could manually change the N1 settings and such like. It was a panel, I think it was above the displays towards the captain side-ish. It's a physical display where you could go in there and put like flexi takeoffs and such like for the engines. We no longer have that physical panel on the MAX. Okay, it's been deleted, but we still have the functions of that panel, and we have this graphic interface. So on here you've got similar sort of controls as an interface, as a graphical interface for the flight crew that you would normally have on the NG as a physical panel. So again, to control it, it's very straightforward. You would use one of these selectors, either the captains or first officers, and you would move that rotary control here, and you would step it down to the next available selection. Once you get it to where you want, you would then press the select key. This little, in this case, let's say we've moved it down to both, this little grey icon here would go green, like this one already is. This one will have a little green ident in it. This one would go solid grey. And at this point, this window would open up, become grey, just like this one down here, allowing you then to change the value in there. Okay, so it allows you to do, change the M1 reference and such like, change your V speeds, that type of things, and also I do things like flexible takeoffs and such like. Okay, but that's how you get to it. You press the info switch. Manual reversion. Okay, so we mentioned this earlier, and I said I'd go through it in a bit more detail and give you some examples. So this top picture here, this top image here that we've got, is showing us our displays, how they normally would be, okay, without any faults. So our primary flight display, auxiliary window, and a full-scale nav display, full-screen nav display. Okay, and that's how it would normally be. If I move this switch to outboard, basically what I'm doing is I'm switching that inboard display off, okay? And the image that was on this inboard display is now moved across, and it's compacted, okay? We've compacted the primary flight display, the outboard display for the captain. And on here now we've got the same information that we had in this case at the top, but it's smaller. Everything's been compact, squashed onto a single screen. So here we've got our nav display, which has moved over. Here's our PFD, which has now taken the place of the auxiliary window, okay, to fit it all in. But we've maintained the auxiliary window as well. We've moved the auxiliary window from the side, and we've placed it across the top. So even though we've got all the information, it's just smaller, okay? The same can be done if I move the switch to inboard. So I'm now forcing this information here onto the inboard display. And again, because I've done that, it's compacted it. Okay. And that's how we manually compact the displays. can be done automatically as well. In this case, let's say this was the engine display now that was shown on here. When I press my engine transfer switch, this button there, okay, it would now move the engine display from here to the inboard display on the first officers and vice versa, okay, because this has now become a multifunction display, okay. So now my cursor, these cursors here, oops, beg your pardon, these cursor controls now, you would not normally be able to put them on that screen. You can now put them on that screen, okay, because you can now manipulate information only on this portion here. You still can't put the cursor onto a PFD, okay. But it allows for manual reversion. Excuse me for a second, I'm just going to close my window. The schools are emptying out now. It's 3:10 in the afternoon, so all the kids have been booted out and they're all going home. So they all walk past the house. So I'm just close my window. I apologise if you heard anybody shouting there. Okay, so those are the displays, what we call manual reversion. As I say, normally done automatically. However, we do have to have the manual backup just in case the automation doesn't work. And we also have to allow maintenance to test these systems, okay, to test the switching logic to make sure that it does work. So there's the switch. One for the captain, one for the first officer. Again, we've already mentioned the engine display several times. Engine display is always shown so long as it's available. Okay, it's going to be shown primarily on the inboard displays, but as I've just mentioned, we could put it on an outboard display if we wanted to. We show the engine information in two formats. Okay, we show it in the normal format, which you've got here, where we've got the primary engine information and secondary engine information. If I press the ENG button, ENG, not the transfer one, but the ENG switch, this one here, then it will remove all secondary engine information and it will just maintain the primary engine information, as I say, M1, EGT and fuel flow. Okay. If I press the button again, engine button again, it just brings back all that secondary info. Okay. So there we have it. That's our engine switch. Okay. We also mentioned these switches before. The source switch. So this is the source of information that we're taking from our display processor computers and we're putting onto our displays. As I said, they're normally sided. DPC number 1 provides images on the captain's displays, DPC number 2 on the first officer's displays. Normally the switch is left in auto, and should we lose a graphics card, a graphics generator, or a complete DPC, okay, then the system would normally configure it itself. The flight crew, aren't given any indication whatsoever for a failed graphics generator or a failed graphics card, okay? They don't need to know unless it affects them. And normally it won't affect them, okay? The only time it's going to really affect them and the only time we're going to give the crew any indication is if they lose a complete display processor computer. Now don't get me wrong, if we lose graphics cards, graphics generators, we will get maintenance messages. But they won't be correlated maintenance messages, so there'll be no flight deck effect. Okay, so it won't bring up a status message. But maintenance will be able to see it, but the crew won't. There's no point in telling them. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't need to know. Ignorance is bliss. Okay, so we only show the crew for complete failure of a display processor, whether it be automatic or whether we manually select it. If I wanted to, I could force the system. In this case, I've moved the switch to all on one. I've basically done there is I've switched off DPC number 2. The system sees that as a failure of DPC number 2. So it shows me on here on the captain's display and on the first officer's displays, PFDs just below the speed tape, it says display source 2. It shows the failed display. It's an amber and a yellow amber colour, so it's a cautionary. And it's telling both crew, captain and first officer, that they are on a single source. Okay, for their displays. If the serviceable display now, the serviceable DSP, in this case, all on one, so DPC number 1, if that started to have failures, graphics generators or graphics cards, then would start to lose displays in the flight deck. Okay, one graphics generator supplies one image. Okay. This graph on the right hand side, this portion here, it's to give you an idea of the switching logic and the different graphics cards that's going to be used. It shows some information, but not all information. If we look at the top here, it says no. I'm not going to go through all of these, so don't panic. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these and bore you to death with it. But if I showed you this top one here, it says no failures, none. So everything's working serviceable, everything's fine. Left outboard, left inboard, DPC number 1, as I've mentioned. Graphics card A. Okay, if it was to tell you the whole truth, okay, if it was to tell you everything, it would say graphics card A, graphics generator A. Graphics card A, generator B. Okay, same for the first officers. DPC number 2 for the inboard and outboard displays, as I've mentioned, on side. Graphics card B, graphics generator A. Graphics card B, graphics generator B. Okay, so it's only showing the graphics card, not the individual generators. On the maintenance awareness system, the maintenance data pages, and unfortunately I don't think we show it on this course, but it's certainly in the line and base and the differences notes. There is a page you can go to on the MAX display system. I think there's about 14 pages for MAX display system on this aircraft, and don't hold me to it, I think it's page 7. I don't know if I'm that sad to remember it, but I think it's page 7. It actually shows you as a graphic the layout of the displays and which graphics generator is feeding which display. It's a very handy display to look at, because it really only gives you it's the only real way of seeing which graphics card and graphics generator is connected to which display. It's a handy piece of kit. So that's what this is doing here. It's just giving you an idea in the auto position. Manual's the same when you force it. In this case, we've forced the screens to all on 2. So we basically switched off DPC number 1. Therefore, we show display source 1 as the failed system. Okay. DPC 1, DPC 2, display source 1, display source 2, either or are shown on both sides because it affects both crew. Okay. And we show it below the speed tape. Display control panel, mention this one as well. Again, it's left in the normal position. This is controlling the EFIS control panels. Normally, again, they're sided, captain and first officer. The captain loses their EFIS control panel, we move the switch to both on 2. Okay. Now when the first officer makes changes to his displays using their EFIS control panel, it will change the first officer's display and the captain's display. Indication for that, well, we don't show the first officer in this case because the first officer is still using their EFIS control panel, but we show the captain. We show the captain in this case because the captain no longer has use of their EFIS control panel. They're going to have to use the first officers. So the captain will see these indications. Display control panel under the altitude tape, but only on the captain's side because it's the captain's panels that's failed. If I was to switch it to both on 1, I've basically switched off the first officer's EFIS control panel. Only the first officer would see display control panel. Telling the first officer you're going to have to make selections on the captain's EFIS display, EFIS control. Display source is shown on both sides because it affects both crew. Single source. Okay, shown in amber. Okay. Our maintenance awareness system. So I have another video to show you. Again, we do have audio with it, so I'll have to unplug my headset. So as I said before, I've got my laptop on full volume. If you need to increase the volume at all, you'd have to increase it on your own machines. When it comes to the maintenance awareness system, excuse me, for those of you who've got 8.7 experience, you have to forgive me, I don't have 777 experience, only 8.7. It's very similar to what you've got on the 8.7. Okay, it works in pretty much the same way control wise. It's not as flexible as 8.7, but the interface is standard. Okay, it's a similar sort of graphic that you're going to be looking at. The maintenance awareness system, you can see down here the systems that connect to it. So again, nowhere near as many as the 8.7. The 8.7 is much more complex than the MAX, but those ATAs, those aircraft systems connect to the the maintenance awareness system. So we can look at maintenance information for those particular aircraft, systems. Across the top here, we've got our menu. To get to it, it's very simple. We press the Systems button, brings up the Systems page. We select Maintenance. When I select Maintenance, it takes me initially to the status page. Okay, status page shows me all the active status messages. I can then use these controls across the top, these icons across the top, to select the maintenance data pages or maintenance control pages or onboard maintenance. Onboard maintenance function is like the central maintenance computing function, okay, and it looks very similar and is controlled in a very similar fashion as it is on the 87. Okay, so we also have our maintenance light. The maintenance light is up on the P5 panel in the position where the PSEU annunciator was. Maintenance light is tied to the status page. Okay, if you have an active status message, then you will have the maintenance light on. There's 2 ways to get rid of that maintenance light. Well, 3 ways if you cheat, take the filaments out. Okay, but there's normally 2 ways. Okay, that you would take, or you could put out that maintenance light. Either fix the fault, which removes the status message, or defer it. Okay, defer the fault if you can, when you apply the MEL. Okay, so the maintenance light is tied to status messages. If the maintenance light is on, the crew won't take it. You can't dispatch with the maintenance light on. The maintenance light will come on 30 seconds after the aircraft's touched down if you have an active status message. Okay. It doesn't come on in flight, only when the aircraft touches down. 30 seconds later, the maintenance light comes on. We don't put it on in flight because it is a maintenance light. It's, the crew don't need to see it. Okay, they'll see the status message anyway on the status page. So I'm going to show you a short video. Again, so my computer doesn't crash out, I will just stop my display, stop sharing it while I bring up the video, and then I will bring you back on so you can see what I'm showing. So I'll just stop sharing for a moment. You should still be able to hear me though. I'm going to open the maintenance awareness video. Oops, hang on a sec. For those of you who have sat in on the line and base or the differences class, then you will probably have seen this video, but it does give some good information, okay? And it gives my voice a little bit of a rest and alleviates your ears from my voice for a few minutes. So I'm going to unplug my headset and I'm going to play the video. Okay.
This video gives an overview of the Maintenance Awareness System. The Maintenance Awareness System is a function of the MAX display system. It uses multifunction displays, 3 MFD selectors, and the maint light to show airworthiness and system information. Use the MFD selector to access the Maintenance Awareness System. If the maint light is on, a status message exists. Status messages indicate a fault that must be repaired or deferred. Maintenance pages aid in system analysis and fault isolation. Data shows in real time or as event snapshots. You can print, data link, or erase the information. Use the airplane configuration data page to view and edit airplane identification data. Use the miscellaneous system control page to put the APU and EEC into test mode, show maintenance pages above 10,000 feet, and enable dual MFD display mode. Use the latched message erase page to view and erase latched status messages and scheduled maintenance task messages. Use the Mate Light page to select active status messages for dispatch and turn off the Mate Light. This completes the 737 MAX Maintenance Awareness Overview.
Hopefully you're all able to hear that. Let me just see, what's this? Got a quick message here or something. During engine start, the maintenance light will turn off. Okay, so to the maintenance light, if you have any status messages that appear, any failures that generate a status message in flight, then obviously you will get the status indication on your status page. You'll see the status message. When the aircraft touches down, 30 seconds after touchdown, the maintenance light will come on, okay, if you've got an active status message. Once the aircraft has touched down, you've shut the engines down, the maintenance light will stay on until either you've deferred those faults, if you can, or you've fixed those faults. So long as you have fixed or deferred all of the status messages, the maintenance light will go off, okay? The maintenance light will also go off if you start an engine. Okay, so if you start the engines, the maintenance light will also go off. There's, as far as I'm aware, and Brian, please feel free to jump in if you want. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing the crew can do with the maintenance light. There's no other way of switching it off. Okay, so they cannot, there's no switch, there's nothing in OMF that they can get to actually switch off that maintenance light. Okay, as far as I'm aware. Okay, so that was a question I got asked before. The maintenance light has to be off for dispatch. Okay, it's to check it's part of the airworthiness for the crew to accept the aircraft for maintenance. That light is off, that maintenance light is off. If it's on, they're not going to take it. Okay, and as I said to you before, you know, the ground test switch will bring a status message on, which will also bring the maintenance light on. That's probably an easy one for people to forget. So again, just when you do these tests, just make sure you follow the correct procedures, follow the AMM task, and you make sure you put that ground test switch back to the normal position to remove that status message. This is so the question is about whether it on ground or taxi out. This is whenever the engine is running. So if you start an engine, the maintenance light will go out. Okay, if the engine is off, then the maintenance light will be on. Okay, or directly after, or 30 seconds after touchdown, the maintenance light will come on for active status messages. Okay, so let's have a quick look at our status page. So to get to the status page, as I've mentioned, we press the systems button, brings up our systems page. We go to maintenance. When we select the maintenance icon, okay, it automatically defaults to the status page. That's the video we just looked at. And this is our status page. Okay, we can have up to 28 status messages on a status page. If you have any more than 28, then you'll have page 1 of 2, let's say, and then below here, you'll have additional icons allowing you to go to previous and next page. Okay, if you've only got the one page, then you won't see previous and next. On here, it's showing you all the active status messages. Okay, even if the status message has been deferred, it is still active. Okay, it's still reporting to the maintenance awareness system, so it's still active. So you may have deferred status messages and the maintenance light might be out, but you will still see those status messages on the status page because they're active. Okay, the only way you can get the status message off the status page is to fix that fault. Okay, so you will potentially see status messages on that page. The status page, as I say, 28 in total for each page. What we've done here is we've moved along. So we've looked at the status page. We've now used our cursor control device and we've moved it to maintenance data pages. So again, these pages, you may or may not use them, okay? Maintenance data pages can be very, very useful depending on if you've got snags, faults, or depending on what information you may require, let's say for engine runs or doing ground tests or something of that nature. When you move the cursor to maintenance data pages, then it will show you, it defaults to display selection, okay? Display selection will now show you these ATA chapters. There are 10 different systems that report to the maintenance awareness system. You will always, or you should always see real-time information. Okay, so long as there's information being generated, you should be able to see it. So under real, you should see display. You shouldn't normally see anything in these areas here for manual or auto events. To have an icon in these areas here requires something to have happened. Either we've taken a picture manually ourselves or the system has automatically taken a picture of the maintenance data pages. Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily normally see anything in here. When it comes to engine exceedances, again, you wouldn't normally see anything in there unless you've had some kind of exceedance of some kind. Okay, and only then would you see information in there. We can print that information. So again, all I've done now is move the cursor along and I've gone to print, and instead of showing display, it shows print. And if you have the flight deck printer, which is optional, then you can print that information off, okay, from the flight deck printer. If I move the selection to data link, then it allows me to send that data, okay? If you have ACARS and you've got the system set up, it can transmit data via ACARS to a ground base, okay? And you've also got the means to erase it. You can't obviously erase real-time information because it's constantly being updated, but you can and you should erase manual and auto events before dispatch, okay? There is a limited amount of events that these will record, up to a maximum of 5 events, okay? If it recorded a 6th event, it would delete the oldest. So basically, it will only show you the 5 most recent events, okay? What I want to do is, what the next few pages I'm going to show you is a presentation that I've got. It's nothing special. You've probably seen it all before anyway when you did your differences course. But these next few pages here, they're showing a lot of information and not really showed you how to get to it or how to record any of that information. So I'm just going to jump to this one for the time being, and I'm just going to bring up this PowerPoint slide. Okay, so this was done by one of my colleagues. It's I'm not going to take credit for it. He did a pretty good job of it actually. I just made a few changes, but this is to show what we call manual snapshots. So there's no, on the MAX, there's no event record switch. On a lot of aircraft, you've got an event record switch. On the 87, it's on the center console. You press the switch, it takes a manual picture of the maintenance data pages. You don't have that on the MAX. So to do manual event records, you have to be looking at the real-time page to get a manual event to record an event. Okay, so this is how you would normally see it on your aircraft. Real-time information waiting to be displayed. Hopefully no manual or auto events. Okay, which is good. That's exactly what you'd expect. Okay, to record a manual snapshot, you have to select one of these real-time display icons here. Okay, to the ATA chapter that you want to record. So in this case, we're using our cursor control device, our little selector, and we're moving the cursor And in this case, we've gone to ATA 27, flight controls, okay? And all I do now is I would press the select button on my cursor selector. When I press the select button, it brings up the flight control page. I'm not going to go through all the details on here, okay? Brian will do that when he gets to flight controls. So I don't want to go through it with you at the moment. But on here, this is real-time information. I know this is just a picture, but on the aircraft, things will be changing. As you move control surfaces, as situations change, conditions change, then the values on here are going to start changing. So this is real time. You can see the time and the date down the bottom here. Okay, UTC time and date coming from the GPS, which goes to the display processor computers. To take a manual snapshot, you press record. So you move your cursor, ding, 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 bring it to record, you press select. Okay, and it takes a picture, a snapshot in time, and it holds it in memory. You've also got options here to print and send. So you don't have to go back to a previous menu to select print or data link. You can do it from here if you wanted to. But if you did it from here, press print or send, then what it would also do, as well as printing it or as well as sending it, it will also take a manual snapshot. Okay, so you'll also have a picture of it as well. So in this case, we've selected record and I've taken a picture. Okay, if I now go back to the previous menu, when we just come from, move the cursor over to previous menu and select it, it takes me back to that first initial page. And now I can see display. That is the picture that I've just taken. If I want to view that information, then again, I will move my cursor to display, I will select it, and it shows me that picture. The time and date that picture was taken. Okay, there's no record anymore because there's no point in taking a picture of a picture. Okay, there's an erase button, so I could erase that information if I wanted to. I can at this point also send it or print it. Again, if I press send or print, because this is a photograph, it won't take another picture. It will just send it or just print it. If I wanted to take another picture of the same ATA chapter, then again what I would do is I would go back to my initial page. So go previous menu, go back here, and I would select 27 again, ATA 27. So I bring my cursor down, select display, real-time information is shown again. I will take another picture by selecting the record button. So now I've taken two pictures of the same ATA. Okay. When I now go back to previous menu, rather than saying display, it says show list. Show list because I've got more than one picture. Doesn't know which one I want to show, so it's asking me. So now I select show list. When I select show list, it shows me those two captions, those two pictures in time, with the date and the time those pictures are taken. And now all I do is I move my cursor to the picture that I want to look at. I can have up to 5 on here, okay? 5 most recent pictures, okay? Again, I'm now looking at it, there's the time and the date the picture was taken. And again, I can erase it, send it, or print it. Okay. We also have automatic snapshots. So this is when a status message has been generated and we've got a maintenance data page associated with that ATA. There are a whole bunch of status messages that will trigger an auto snapshot. We're just going to show you one of them. Okay, well, I'm just going to show you one of them. To see the status messages, you already know how to do that. We press the system switch. When I press the system switch, it shows me the status page. Okay, so the systems page, then I select maintenance and it shows me the status page. Okay, and there it is. And there's our pack overheat shutdown. That is our status message. Okay, well, because this also reports to the MAX, the maintenance awareness system, it will have also automatically taken a picture of that maintenance data page. Okay, so if I want to see those pictures, the aircraft's on the ground now, maintenance gets on board, they use the cursor control, then take me to the maintenance data pages. What they also see now, as well as my manual snapshots, they will also see display for air conditioning, ATA 27. 21, I beg your pardon. Okay, so there's the auto event. It says display because there's only one picture. Okay, so now if I want to view it, I move my cursor and I get to display and I select it and it will show me that auto event. Okay, there's the picture in time that the system automatically took when that status message was generated. There's the time and the date, and there's the relevant status message tied to that picture. Because you may have more than one picture for the same ATA. Maybe different status messages have brought those pictures or generated those pictures. So it's always handy to know which status message is tied to which display. So it shows you down the bottom there. Okay, not only the time and the date, but also the status message it was tied to. Again, for a second event on the same ATA, just as with the manual snapshots, it will automatically take another picture, but because you've got more than one picture now, it will going to show you the similar sort of format that it did for the manual pages. Rather than say display, it will say show list. And then from there, you select show list, and it will show you those two auto events. Again, it will take maximum of 5. Okay, and again, you just move your cursor control, take it to where you want it to go to select which one you want, and you can view that image, that picture that was taken. Okay. Again, it's information that you may not need as a maintenance engineer, but you might need it. I always say it's better to have something and not need it than need it and not have it. Okay, but it's there. Okay. We can also erase some of these messages, and I'll show you that in a moment. Down here, this is just showing you the ATA chapters, real-time information. So these are back to the notes that I've got now. That was just a PDF that I had just wanted to show you. Hopefully it made it a little bit clearer, didn't make anything more confusing. This is all real-time information. Again, I'm not going to go through all the information on here, because these maintenance pages, these maintenance data pages are going to be shown when you get to the relevant ATA, and this information will be explained to you then. But again, this is all live information, real-time information, so these values are going to change. Again, you've got the manual record switch there, print and send, previous menu. If you have more than one page, and many of these data pages have more than one page, then you have a previous and next selector there as well. The flight controls, again, huge amount of data on these pages. If data's your thing, then all your birthdays have come at once, okay? There's lots of information that you can look at on here. Some of it could be very useful, you know, if you're looking at proximity sensors and near-far states. I know when I was on the aircraft many years ago, the way we used to check the near and far state of a sensor, whether that sensor was working, it could sense a target. We used to have to get a fluke, a multimeter on the back of a PCB card. Not anymore. You can go and look at it on these maintenance data pages. The auto events will only take a picture of the ATA chapter if that system reports to the maintenance awareness system. So if you've got an ATA chapter that has a status message that isn't a part of this, you won't get a picture, okay? Obviously, because there's no data page for that picture. Again, for the SMIDs themselves, this is showing you the SMID 1 and SMID 2, the ground status, nose landing gear squat switches, program pins. Again, all the information you could ever need is shown on here. Saves you having to go to the back of the actual plug itself to check. You can view it all on these maintenance on these pages. Max display system. Again, huge amounts of information here. You can see you've got one of 19 pages for the Max display system. Normally you wouldn't see fault or amber in any of these. It would all be white, saying display or normal. Anything that shows in amber with fault or config in amber means there's something wrong, it's not normal. So in this case, there's something wrong with displays. I would use my cursor control and I would select that icon. It would take me to that relevant page. Okay, it could be page 7, could be page 8 of those 19 pages. And on there, it will give you more information. It may give you a graphic showing you what's failed, or it may just give you text showing you what's failed. Okay. This is to do with configuration for the MAX display system. It's to do with software configuration for the DPCs. It doesn't give any information to any other ATA chapter or any other aircraft system. It's purely for the MAX display system. Okay. So the reason it's showing config in amber is because there's 2 different part numbers in those DPCs. The same part number, but could be different versions. Okay. It won't tell you which is the correct version or correct part number. It will just highlight the 2 differences. Okay, you'd have to go and research that to find out which one should be loaded. But it's telling you that the software within those DPCs is not the same. PSEUs, proximity sensor electronics unit. It's a different unit than's fitted to the NG. Again, Brian will go over this tomorrow. It's in the same location. It's a bit of a bigger box. There's no front bite test on it. Okay, you've got all the plugs still, channel 1 and channel 2. But again on here, it's showing you the near and far state of the proximity sensors and the targets, as you can see here. And then also here in mils, that's showing the gap, the distance between the target and the sensor. Mils stands for thousandths of an inch. Okay, so you can see the distance there between the target and the sensor itself. Pretty good, I guess, if you're going to start rigging these things. You can see it on these displays. There's obviously the range for the target and sensor. But again, lots of information on here. Again, Brian will talk through that. I don't want to steal his thunder on that. Okay, because there's other information you could see if you've got a system in test and such like. Air supply, ATA36, again, stacks of information on there. Positions of valves, pressures, temperatures, pre-cooler temperatures, you name it. It's all on there. APU, again, information to do with our APU. As I say, I'm not going to go into detail on these. I just want to show you where they are, what's available to you. When you get to those particular chapters, these pages will be explained in a bit more detail then. But again, you can see here the RPM of the APU, the EGT, temperatures, the position of the APU inlet door, opened or closed, the commanded position, the actual position. Huge amounts of info. Very similar to the 87, very similar. Performance pages to do with our engines. Huge amounts of data in there. And EPCS pages. Okay, so again, you can even see the position of the fuel metering valve. It's so detailed. Okay, 1 of 4 pages, as you can see there. So lots and lots of info. To cycle through the pages, again, you'd use your cursor and you'd select previous and next just to cycle through all the pages. Again, you can print it, you can record it, or you could send it. And the last one of these maintenance data pages are the engine exceedances. And again, as for the way I understand it, and please, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of this is that you wouldn't normally see anything in there unless you had some kind of event. Okay. But if you do have an event, it will automatically start to record. Okay. Maintenance control pages. So what we've done here, I've just moved the cursor again along from maintenance data, and I've moved it to maintenance control, and I've selected it. I've got 4 options now. This is a drop-down menu that appears on the screen. Airplane configuration data, miscellaneous systems controls, latched message erase, and maintenance light. Okay, these are the 4 examples of the pages that you'll see. Again, there's various options that you may see on this miscellaneous systems controls. Okay, different options on there. The placard one is an option type of thing. Okay, in-air maintenance, the actual selection is an option. Okay, so again, there's different things that you may or may not see on these, depending on what options have been taken. This is the airplane configuration data, or ACD. This information here, this is the screen you'll see initially. So on here, everything is grayed out. There's nothing that you can change. So you're reading the information, and this information, or most of it, this information is coming from DPC number 1, Display Processor Computer 1. Over here, we've got the tail number of the aircraft, the airline ID, the Mode A ID. So that's the Mode A ID, your squawk code that's coming from your ATC control panel in the flight deck. To change that number, it's very simple. You just change the number on your ACT control panel, okay, on your transponder panel. Not only does it change the number here, but it also changes it in the auxiliary windows as well, in the flight deck, okay? So that's how you would change the number there. The CellCal code, that's the CellCal code that's being displayed in the auxiliary window. If I change this CellCal code, it will not change the aircraft's CellCal code. It will only change what I'm being shown in the auxiliary window. The CellCal code is changed via pin programming on the rack in the avionics bay, okay? It's strapping that we use to change the CellCal code. This is just for display in the flight deck. Over here, the MAX display system configuration data. Well, again, the different units, English units, metric, stuff like that, okay? Down here, time and date, which is coming from the GPS via the DPCs. And then this is to do with programming for the DPCs themselves, okay? They're just links, okay, pin strapping that we use to determine or to tell the DPCs what aircraft it's fitted to. In this case, the 737-8, the MAX-8, okay? Because they are universal, they're fitted to all MAX aircraft. They're not only fitted to MAX, they're fitted to other aircraft types as well. So we tell them where they are, what aircraft they're in, using pin strapping, shorting links. You'll notice down the bottom here, we've got what we say is an unlock icon, okay? We also have a print page, so if you've got a printer in the flight deck, you can print that information off. Previous menu takes you back to this page, okay, this initial page, and then sync data, okay, allows you to sync the data from one DPC to the other. So if you swap a DPC out, you can sync the data between the two. If I select unlock page, then this changes color. It changes to green, and it says on there lock page. But when I select unlock, a few things change. These now allow me to change the values, okay? So if I'm swapping a DPC from one aircraft to another, or I've got a new one from stores because I'm swapping a US one out, you're probably going to, well, you are going to have to come in here and change this data, okay? This allows you to do that. On here now, I can now use, again, the cursor control device, the select button, to change the information for tail number, airline ID. Can't change the squawk code. If I wanted to, I'd use the ATC control panel to do that, the transponder panel. I can change the CellCal code. Well, I'm only going to change the CellCal code on an existing unit if the aircraft changes location and it's issued with a new CellCal code. But if it's a new DPC, then obviously I'm going to have to set the CellCal code for that particular aircraft. As I say, it's only what's being displayed in the auxiliary window. It has no effect on the aircraft itself. Okay. Once I've made those changes, I've made those changes to that screen. I've not set those changes yet. Okay, nothing has actually changed. I could press cancel at this point and it would revert back to what it was. If I now press lock page, it now makes those changes to the DPC. Okay. I can then sync that data to the other DPC. Okay. Select the confirm button to synchronize all data. So I press confirm. Now all that data is synchronized between the two DPCs. Miscellaneous systems controls. So again, all I've done is move the icon, the selector, the cursor down to the next available selection, and I've selected it, and it shows me this page. Okay. On here we've got some options, okay, and options within options. So if we look at these top ones first, these are on the aircraft. You'll see them on all MAX aircraft. EEC maintenance power and APU maintenance power. These are soft switches, okay? So if I put these switches into tests, it automatically powers up the EECs for the engine. It saves me moving the fuel cutoff switch to run. Don't want to do that, okay? For maintenance, it allows me to power the EECs. It also allows me to put the APUC, the APU controller, into test as well, okay? Again, when it comes to the engine and APU, Brian will explain these and the do's and don'ts with them, but it allows you to put these controls, these EECs, into test from a maintenance point of view. This one here, in-air maintenance. So it's an option just to have it on this page. You may not have this option at all. If you have the option, then you'll see in-air maintenance, disable and enable, okay? So what's that allowing me to do? Well, this allows the airline to either allow or not allow the flight crew to view maintenance data pages and maintenance control pages above 10,000 feet. Okay, you can always view these selections, maintenance data and maintenance control pages when the aircraft's on the ground. However, if you have that switch in enable, once the aircraft takes off, from takeoff to 10,000 feet, you cannot get access to those icons, okay, to those selections. However, once the aircraft passes 10,000 feet, these will now be selectable, and the crew can look at those maintenance data pages and so on, and they can take manual records. They can send that information down to the ground station and back to the base. If you put it in disable, then as soon as the aircraft takes off, you can't access it, any of that information. Once you get above 10,000 feet, you still cannot access that information. And you can't get access to this page because it's locked out anyway. The only way you can get back to this page now is when the aircraft's on the ground. You can select maintenance control pages, and now you get back to here. Okay? So enable and disable. This is for the placard that I mentioned before. So again, on a lot of aircraft, you will have a sticker, a little placard that's normally velcroed on or stuck on in some means to tell you the capability of the autopilot, or in this case, the head-up guidance system. Again, maintenance can change this, Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1, or completely disable it, depending on how capable your aircraft is. And then this one, MFD mode. So I mentioned to you before about single and dual MFD. When I press the systems button, it gives me a systems page. That's classed as a multifunction display page. I can display all this information that I've shown you on that page. I can navigate to here and select dual MFD. What does that do for me? It just gives me another systems page. So now I've got a systems page on the captain's side, and I've also got one on the first officer's side. This is where those independent cursor control devices now come into play, okay? Because I can now move cursors from one screen to another, either a center screen, a left screen, or a right screen, depending on the seat that I'm sat in. Unfortunately, I can't show you using microsim. It would be very easy to show you, okay, rather than try to explain it. I think trying to explain it causes more confusion. If you do have access to microsim, then have a look at it, okay? It works on microsim for the MAX display system. Or if you can get on the aircraft, just put it into dual MFD and play with it from there. You know, the more you practice with these things, the easier it becomes. But it gives you two multifunction displays, one on the captain's side, one on the first officer's side, allowing you to do two independent things at the same time. When the aircraft takes off, it drops back to single MFD mode, okay? And then you can, once it gets back on the ground, you can manipulate it again. We'll just look at a couple more slides and then we'll take a break for about an hour. You can have your lunch, breakfast, dinner, evening meal, supper, wherever you're at. I just want to get a couple of more pages done. Latched message erased. So again, this is on our multifunction display. I've selected message erased. On here now it splits the screen into two. Okay, so erasable status messages and scheduled maintenance tasks. Erasable status messages. Some status messages are latched. Okay, so you can have status messages for systems that have failed that will latch the status message. So you can do a ground test, you can do a replacement test or whatever. The test passes successfully, but the status message is still showing. Okay, you have to physically remove that status message. You have to erase it. Okay, so there are certain things on this aircraft that will generate latch status messages. I always use status messages, things like fuel filters and that, where you get an impending blockage of a filter when you've got a differential pressure across that filter. As soon as you switch the fuel filter, the fuel pumps off, you've no differential pressure, so there's no real fault, okay, because it's the same pressure across the filter. But that message could potentially be latched to tell you that the filter is actually blocked. Okay, it's just that you can't see it at the moment. You could change, you could replace the filter, do the ground tests and everything else, and then you may have to come in here to erase that message, that latch message. Okay, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can get rid of status messages by replacing a component and repowering it. It'll do a byte check. Like the DPCs, you replace a DPC, it'll do a byte check. It can automatically delete the status message if the byte is successful. Or you may have to do a ground test, and only on the completion of a successful ground test will the status message be erased. Okay, the fault be erased. Or you may have to go in here and manually erase it. Down the bottom here, and don't forget, status messages will always bring on the maintenance light. Down the bottom here are scheduled maintenance tasks. So these are tasks that at some point you're going to have to do. Okay, they could be tied to maintenance messages, but they're not going to bring the maintenance light on. Okay, I guess maintenance planning and people of that nature will be looking at this. It gives you a bit of a heads up of things that are going to have some kind of maintenance done to them within a certain amount of time, a given amount of time. Okay, you may get some dispensation on that, but you're going to have to do them at some point in time. Okay, again, probably some kind of ground test you'll have to do before you are able to erase it from the scheduled maintenance tasks. But scheduled maintenance tasks will not bring on the maintenance light. Okay, they're more of a heads up type of thing. On the last page we'll look at before we take a break is the maintenance light page. So again, sometimes the maintenance lights of some of the courses that I've covered have caused a little bit of confusion. Okay, at the end of the day, the light is just a light. That's all it is. The light comes on because you've got an active status message. Simple as that. Okay. On this page here, this is what we class as the maintenance light page, and I apologize for some of the status messages that are shown on here, because some of them shouldn't be shown on here. Okay, but let's just use it as an example. The maintenance light page will show you status messages that can be deferred. When I say can be deferred, it's not a quick fix. Okay, you wouldn't go to this page to see if you can defer that status message, that fault. You would have to go to the MEL to check that. Okay, these maintenance lights and the status information that's shown on here, these status messages, is actually tied to the MMEL, not the MEL. Okay, so you'd still have to go to the MEL to make sure that the airline is happy for you to defer those faults. But if the airline's happy for you to defer them, then you can go to this page. What does this page do? Well, all it does is put a tick in a box. It doesn't actually defer the status message. You're still going to have to go through the process of deferring that fault as you would normally do. But this just gives an input to the maintenance awareness system to tell the maintenance awareness system that you are going to defer that status message, that fault. So let's just say that all of the status messages on the status page were deferrable. Okay, all of those status messages on the status page will be shown on the maintenance light page. Now, if you wanted to defer them all, and you were allowed to, then you could put a tick in every single one of these boxes. And as I say, please ignore what they're tied to, because you cannot defer a DPC. You have to fix that. So let's just say you could. We'd put a tick in all these boxes. So long as there's no other status messages on the status page that you cannot defer, the maintenance light would go out. You've told them, the maintenance awareness system, that you are deferring all of those faults. If there was another status message on the status page that wasn't on this maintenance light page, so you couldn't defer it, then the maintenance light would still be on. Okay, you've deferred 10, but the 11th you're going to have to fix to put the maintenance light out. Okay, if you put ticks in all of these boxes, the maintenance light goes out because you've got no other status messages other than the ones that can be deferred. You will still see the status messages on the status page because they're still active. You haven't fixed them, you've just deferred them. Okay, the crew are interested in the maintenance light. Okay, as long as that's out, it's good to go. Okay, so they are the maintenance light page, and then at some point you're going to have to obviously fix them. When you fix a deferred status message, you do not have to come back to this page to untick it. Okay, as soon as you fix the fault, the status message is removed from the status page. It's no longer shown on the maintenance light page. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, so what I intend to do now, because that is the end of the MAX display system, that's just system summary, I think it's a good time to have a good break. Covered a lot of information there. So it is just gone past the hour here. It's coming up to 5 past the hour. So shall we say an hour, so you can get yourselves a good break, a good lunch, breakfast, dinner, supper, wherever you are, and we'll come back. Let's say again 5 past the hour, in an hour's time. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll see you in an hour. Enjoy your lunch or your dinner or your supper or your breakfast.